Welcome to Irresistible. You ignite your passion and purpose. I'm your host, Karen Seltz, and we have such a fun episode for you tonight. I have two, not one, but two. It's the first time I've ever had two guests on tonight. They are Dr. Tracy, oh gosh, let me try that one more time. I love live. Dr. Tracy Christopherson and Michelle Troseth. And they are the co-founders of MissingLogic. And when we met to talk about doing this episode, I was absolutely blown away. They are going to talk about Polarity Intelligence, which I had no idea what it was. And it is definitely, as they will tell you, the missing ingredient in leadership. And I'm going to let you tell it to them because they have so much wisdom and so much knowledge that I know you're just going to love. They are also the co-authors of the book Polarity Intelligence, The Missing Logic in Leadership, and co-hosts of the TRU Leader Podcast. So welcome to the show, Michelle and Tracy.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Karen. We're so excited to be here.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Super excited.
It's amazing to have you both in the same room because when we met, they were in different states. So this is a special treat.
It is.
It is. And we love being together.
We do.
Right. So we're together most of the time, but in the winter, we're not. So this is a special treat for us too.
I love it.
Yeah.
So I would love if we start by you saying a little bit about what is Polarity Intelligence and how did you discover it and make that your passion and your mission?
What do you want
to say? I will start. Well, I'll tell you, we didn't just dream it up one day. You have to know there was a journey to get to our purpose and our passion, which is bringing polarity intelligence to the world and also recognizing it's so important that leaders understand this competency. And just a little bit about us. I'll start. I am a nurse. And I worked at the bedside and did a lot of transformational work in healthcare and was part of that journey back in the 80s of trying to change things. Like healthcare is hard to change. It's still hard to change. And in that work, we really discovered that we had a lot to learn about true transformation. And that things, they just don't happen and we can't fix them. There is no quick fix. So that was the beginning, I think, of us realizing there was something missing. And then we eventually grew up as leaders together and we started our own company, MissingLogic, in 2017. But it started through the journey of really transformational work.
Yeah. So we were, I'm a respiratory therapist. So Michelle and I met at hospital orientation, one of those chance meetings, right? Synchronicity, stand up, shake the hand of the person behind you. That was me. And we've been shaking hands ever since. So we worked together, as Michelle indicated, at the bedside. And then we led healthy work culture work all across North America. And that's where we learned that not every problem or every challenge is a problem that can be solved. That many of the challenges that we face are ongoing and they're actually not problems. They are what we call polarities. Mm-hmm. And polarities are interdependent pairs of values or points of view. They appear to be contradictory or opposites of each other. Many people are aware of this with just a symbol of yin and yang, right? We all have seen that symbol. So that's a polarity, right? And it's really about getting the best of both. Go ahead.
Oh, I said I saw it tonight on your necks.
Yeah, yes. See, that's our little symbol, right? So polarities, these poles need each other over time to get to a greater purpose. So that's what a polarity is. And it's actually a universal law. So this is why we're so passionate about it, is because you cannot avoid polarities. They're everywhere in our lives. And while we have focused on leaders, the polarity intelligence is a missing logic in every aspect of our life because we experience them in every aspect of our life, our personal lives, our communities, and polarity intelligence takes that ability to identify a polarity and it couples it with healthy relationships and meaningful dialogue, because we can't sit in the tension between two opposing perspectives without strong relationships and then being able to really understand the perspectives of the other person and be open to that exploration. So that's why it's kind of there's three components to it: the mindset of understanding polarities, and then the relationships and the ability to engage in meaningful dialogue.
Wow, that sounds really fascinating, and I have no idea what you're talking about. So would you grace us with an example or two, please, of like, how does it show up, like in work, for example, with leaders? How does it show up? And how do you teach people to engage in these meaningful conversations?
Yeah. Well, let me start with just a really simple metaphor that is a polarity that we all experience, and that's inhaling and exhaling. So we have to inhale and exhale to get to that greater purpose of sustaining our lives. If we don't inhale and exhale, we don't have life, right? There's always a consequence to neglecting either inhaling or exhaling. We're going to die, right? If we don't do both, but our body manages it for us. So that's the simplest polarity that there is. And everybody has that managed for them. But any other polarity, and I'll let Michelle talk a little bit about some of the other ones, any other polarity we have to manage, we have to leverage. That's why these three components are so important.
Yeah. So to Tracy's point, they're everywhere, and inhaling and exhaling is really the only one that we don't have to be aware of and to manage. But there are so many polarities in our personal life, our professional life, organizations, and certainly leaders deal with polarities all the time. And one of the ones that Tracy and I are passionate about, because it really helps us to help other leaders be the irresistible you, is really to leverage the polarity of their professional life and their personal life, or work and home. And what we notice in ourselves and in others is we get over focused on work. And sometimes it's because of passion and purpose, as was our case. We were so passionate about the work we were doing. We just started over focusing on work more and more and more, and eventually to the negative consequence of our family life and our personal life, to the point that one time we thought I had a stroke. So it can be very serious if you don't manage these polarities really well. And so we teach leaders how to take action on both, because you have to be vigilant. It's one of the principles of the law of polarity. And so we teach people how to do that.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. And I'm guessing that it supports people with their differing perspectives to resolve conflict. So is that true?
Yeah, actually, polarities teach us to embrace conflict. So often we have conflict because we have opposing perspectives, right? But when those perspectives are interdependent, in other words, they need each other, then we can both know that I don't have to give up my perspective to be open to hearing your perspective and embracing your perspective. And so that really diminishes the conflict. That the conflict we feel is the tension between the two poles, between the two perspectives. And we tend to think that tension needs to be resolved, or in many cases these days, conflict is related to polarization, right? We've got such opposite perspectives. We don't even know how to talk to each other. So we're turning away from each other rather than turning toward each other and trying to understand, hey, if we had both of these, if we had the benefits of both of these perspectives, would we be in a better place? Would we get a higher outcome than we can from either of these perspectives alone? Right. And so it really helps us to step back and say, okay, are these two perspectives that really are totally opposite, don't need each other? Or is there an interdependency here? Do they need each other? Right. So that we can get to that greater purpose. And that's a differentiator. And oftentimes polarities show up as conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much, because you hear so many people saying they're conflict avoidant, or they're people pleasers. And, one of the spiritual principles that I believe are all truths are true, which means nobody's wrong, right?
Right.
And if we can look at it that way and learn to embrace other people's differences and actually be open to learning. I mean, that's my perspective.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we both grow.
Yeah.
So how does it what do you see? Like, what kind of results do people get when they finally get it that conflict or differences are actually helpful or supportive?
Well, that's the best part because the light bulbs go on. They recognize that it's not an either or in a situation that might appear like a conflict, that it really is an and in both. And they understand that because of where they're putting most of the focus, that's why they're experiencing the negative feelings or the negative outcomes. And so, but you can visualize it. Like you have to understand how they work. And then you have to be able to realize that you can recognize that when it's happening, and you also can take action so that you can achieve a higher purpose. Like,
Yeah.
again, back to inhaling and exhaling, it's having life.
Well, many of the leaders that we work with or individuals that we've worked with as well, right? They can get to that greater person, like a higher quality of life. So when I know that I need to have both the best benefits in my professional life and the best benefits in my personal life, and I'm taking action to get those, then the outcome is that I am experiencing positive outcomes in my life almost all the time, rather than experiencing, right, the negative tension and the draw on my life, right? Having to choose between my profession and my home, between my career and my family, right? And we kind of get stuck in that kind of a whack-a-mole life, right? When the tension rises, we're quick try to alleviate it at work, or then we run over to home, we try to alleviate it there. We're just buzzing back and forth. And so the outcomes are I am more balanced. And it's not about 50-50. It's about being able to be in the flow. And when life draws my attention more to one way or the other, I know that I have to give that area of my life, like my profession, my attention, but I know I don't have to do it to the exclusion of my personal life. So I can live a fulfilling life at home and still give attention and achieve significant outcomes at work. So I think that's an example at the personal level of outcomes. I think the other thing is, right from the time we were kids, we were taught how to solve problems, right? Like, what's this? Pointing to your nose, right? Oh, that's your nose. Oh, great. You're so right. That's perfect, right? This is your ear, right? And every time we did it, we got reinforced. That's great. That's right. And then we got into school and we took tests. And what were we looking for? The right answer. And we got rewarded when we had the right answer. So what we learned is that if this is right, then the other is wrong, right? So I think the other outcome is that we're no longer in this, binary thinking that everything is about right and wrong or either and or, that there are opportunities for both and I think that opens up people to be more hopeful, to see that there is more, and to give them that permission to have both, to not have to choose.
Yeah. So for me, it seems like an entire paradigm shift is required when you start working with people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it is.
how do you go about teaching people this, and in a way that they actually buy in and that you make the case for it and they say, oh my gosh, this makes sense. I'm willing to be uncomfortable enough to learn something new.
Well, we have tools that we work with leaders on to help really map out the polarity that they're dealing with. And Tracy and I, we really listen to people. Like, what is your biggest tension right now? What's your biggest pain point? And then based on that, we can identify the polarity that they're struggling with the most. So often, because we work with so many leaders, we do the professional life and personal life, but it may be another polarity as well. And then we can actually identify what are the positive both and help them realize it's not one or the other, and one's not more important than the other. Your work life is not more important than your home life. They are equally important. And then we actually can draw it out for them, and we have tools that help them do that themselves. After we educate them on how to do that, they actually can individualize it for themselves. And I can't tell you how many times they step back and say, oh, now I understand why my life is the way it is, or now I understand why I'm feeling the way that I'm feeling. So, polarities are invisible. We like to say they're like gravity. You don't see gravity, but it's working all the time, and polarities work very much the same way. So we introduce the concept, we give them some simple metaphors to understand it, and then we have tools that they can actually work with to create dynamic balance.
Yeah. So they create a blueprint really for
Mhm.
an action strategy. And to Michelle's point, the reason that they buy in is because they're more often than not already experiencing the negative consequences
Yes.
of over focusing in one area of their life. And that's why they've come to us. I'm not getting the things that I want out of my professional life or my personal life. I know I need to do something different. I know I have to think different. I don't know what that is. And we give them that ability to create a strategy that not only helps them to lay out the actions they need to take, but what's so cool about it is it also includes an early warning system. So when you have an early warning system, right, you know when you need to course correct and course correct quickly. So they don't have to experience those negative consequences. As soon as they start to feel the early warning signs, they already know I either drop the ball and I'm not taking the action I need to take to get the outcome I want, or what I thought would help me isn't helping me. And I need to try something different. And once they create their blueprint and they really start to work that process, they immediately begin to get results. And that's what keeps them in the game.
Mhm.
And then their life starts to change. And I'll tell you, one of the things that we've enjoyed the most is many of the people we've worked with, it's not just the women, a lot of them are women, their husbands have seen the difference. And they're like, you're not giving this up. You got to keep doing this. This is making a significant difference for us, right? Right. And we've even had some leaders who are men say, oh my gosh, I shared this with my wife. And she's just like, oh my God, this is incredible. Like, we got to keep doing this. Right. So they get results right away. That's
Yeah.
what keeps them in the game.
I love it. So can you give us an example of some of the course corrections or some of the things they might experience that say, oh my gosh, warning, warning, Will Robinson, you're going
Yeah.
off course?
Sure. You want to share your
Yeah,
experience
well, I'll tell you my experience.
briefly?
It's kind of a long story, but we'll shorten it up.
You have time.
So, I was a high achieving leader. I did a lot of travel. Like I said earlier, we loved our work. We loved what we did. And one day, there was signs like my dining room table was becoming my desk. Like I would leave and say, I'm so sorry, I'm leaving things a mess, but I got to go on the next trip. And one day when my husband took me to the airport, he literally grabbed my shoulders and said, look at me before I got into the airport. And he said, you have to promise me that when you go to the next hotel, you're going to go to the spa and take a day to yourself. I'm worried about you. And off I went. And about a month later, I found myself in a hospital with the diagnosis of a stroke. Now, the good thing is I didn't have a stroke. I ended up having a very rare hemiplegic migraine event, but I missed the warning signs. And my husband knew about polarities as well. And when he showed up in my hospital room at 1 o'clock in the morning, he said, you're on the downside of work, Michelle. So one of our passionate things is it's not enough to know they exist. You really do need a blueprint. You really do need a plan. And we leverage our blueprints every week because it's small little changes, and those early warning signs could be you start forgetting things. It could be you get more irritable. There's just little things that can help you course correct before you really end up realizing your deepest fear.
Yeah. And I think, they're early warning signs. So, they can be like, we always say, what are you hearing from other people? Like
Mhm.
Michelle's husband, hey, I'm worried about you, or you're not quite yourself. Or what are you feeling? What are you saying to yourself or saying to others? Like just little things like that. And you start to pick up on those little tiny early signs. That's when you know right away. So those are just, great examples.
What about when people are driving in traffic?
Oh,
I
yeah.
think that's like, somebody was telling me about this. I think it's really funny. They do things in traffic. They say things to other people they would never say if they weren't in a car. And I think that's funny. So I wondered if that isn't an example of an indicator,
Sure.
like how
Oh,
you behave in traffic.
Sure. It could be if that's a sign that you're stressed or that you're not well rested, right? And the thing about early warnings is they're unique to every person.
Yeah.
So that's why you can't just create one map and say, okay, everybody live by this, because the outcomes that we want are different depending on the season of life we're in. And, creating your own blueprint is all about, what do I want when I focus my attention on this pole, whether it's professional life and personal life, or activity and rest, or could be caring for self and caring for others. What do I want? And that could look different for me than it looks for Michelle, than it looks for you, as well as the early warning signs can look very different, because we all respond and react differently to different things in our lives, right? And the action strategies will be different, can be different based on where we live, based on what we value, on what we enjoy to do. So it's very individualized to the people that are creating them.
Yeah, that makes sense. So how much of this is in your book?
All of it.
All of it. All
So
of
that
it.
once we read your book, we'll have the ability to create our own blueprint.
Yep. We actually show in the book a very simple how to create a kind of a map on the back of a napkin. You don't even have to have the form that we have. You can take a napkin and draw a cross down the center and put your outcomes that you want for work and your outcomes that you want for home, and then the consequences that are going to happen if you overfocus, because there's always going to be consequences. And those consequences are the loss of the benefits of the other pole. So if I'm working and focused on work, the negative consequences are going to be lost of all the outcomes that I want at home, right? Because I'm not giving them any attention. So my relationship with my husband's going to decline. My health might decline. I might, stop, I might not have, my friendships might suffer, right? There might be just different things that are outcomes I want in my personal life that I'll lose because I'm not giving attention to them. I'm not taking action to get those outcomes. So we would show just how to do that very simply in the book. So that's a big plus.
Yes. And we also do a really good job about what a polarity is, how you have how to cultivate this polarity mindset. And then we have a chapter on healthy relationships and meaningful dialogue, because if you can't sit in this tension with other people, if you don't have a strong foundation of a healthy relationship with yourself and with others, and have conversation, ask the questions. Dialogue is a skill. You think about meetings, or maybe even meetings you have with yourself sometimes.
Or with your husband or your
Yeah.
family, right?
Yeah, it can be a lot of back and forth conversation, but really to leverage polarities, it's really helpful to be able to, be in conversation with intention, create psychological safety, share why you think the way you think, right? That helps us understand and ask questions out of genuine curiosity. And we talk in the book too about how to have candor and diplomacy. Dialogue is all around shared understanding, which really helps when you're dealing with two opposing perspectives as well. And probably one of the best chapters that we get feedback on all the time is what happens when you have two of the three, but not all three. And we have a lot of different case studies, and that's been really helpful for people to say, now I understand why all three of these are kind of the trifecta superpower as leadership in leadership.
Well, yeah. And I think even if you think about trying to manage your personal life and your professional life as an example, you're not going to be able to do that really well, because if you have a family, if there's other people in your life, you need to be able to communicate with them. You need to help them to understand what's important to you. You need to engage them in helping you to leverage this, to take the actions that you need, right? You need to be able to have healthy relationships. I could tell you almost every person we've ever worked with, relationships show up on both sides of their blueprint. They want strong, healthy relationships in the professional work they do, and they want strong, healthy relationships at home. Well, that doesn't just happen. Right? We have to be intentional, and we have to understand what a healthy relationship is. And so we talk about how healthy relationships really transform who we are at the essence of who we are, because we are engaged with other people, right? And we learn from each other, and we engage with each other. And it's not just, taking from each other, right? It's about that reciprocal relationship that helps us both be more than we could be if we weren't in relationship with each other. So it works at all levels, right?
Love that. Helps us be more than we could be if we were alone or not together. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
So Michelle mentioned there something is going to suffer if you don't have all three, or you mentioned it, one of you. What are the three things that are necessary?
Having a polarity mindset. So being able to differentiate between a problem and a polarity, that's a critical competency. Being able to have healthy relationships or be in healthy relationship with others. And then also engaging in meaningful dialogue.
Okay, beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that so much. What's coming to mind is dealing with an ex-husband or something. So how would this benefit people, if they have a difficult relationship with an ex or an in-law or an outlaw?
Well, there are some key principles that we talk about in the book.
Yep.
And we know that it's not about putting a Band-Aid on a relationship, right? Like you can't do a quick fix with a relationship because we're human beings, we're complex. And so when you have when you're following principles, it really helps you to embody changes within yourself, how you're showing up, how you're being with others, how you're seeing others. It's really a long-term kind of an engagement for yourself and a growth strategy for yourself. And it kind of gives you those guardrails. Like that's how I look at it. It's like guardrails on who and how I'm being in relationship with other people. And we help people really create kind of agreements with each other about how are we going to show up with each other? What can I expect from you? What do you need from me? How can we be in a better relationship? And Michelle and I even have our own partnership agreement, right? That we look at all the time, right? Here's what you can expect from me in our business partnership and what I need from you to be able to be my best self in this relationship and in the work that we do. And we have some tools around that. And Michelle can say a little bit more.
Yeah. So it's such a great question because relationships are everywhere, which is what we started with. They're everywhere. They're everywhere. And again, I going back to the principles is really important, but then recognizing the polarities in them as well. So when you think about a polarity, it's just individual and couple, individual and family, but it's really understanding how they both are equally important. And you can begin to understand that you might be dealing with a polarity and you may not be dealing with a problem when it comes to those types of relationships. So I like to say it just adds a lot of wisdom to the situation that you can apply these principles to that will result in a different outcome. And we encourage people to establish practice fields that are closest to them. So it might be just listening to what someone might be complaining to you about, and then identifying, is that a problem or a polarity that they're even talking about, and asking them more questions to kind of draw out maybe what underlying tension that they might be dealing with or you may be dealing with together. So a lot of skills in the book. And that was really important to us. We didn't want it to be a theoretical book. We wanted to give real life examples. Every chapter has reflection questions. We did that so that people could really apply it right away.
Yeah. Well, and you have to have a good relationship with yourself before you can have a good relationship with somebody else, right? So self and other is a big part of those principles about what kind of relationship do I have with myself? Do I really know myself? How deep have I gone with myself, right? And we tend to look outside ourselves at the challenges that we face. And sometimes the challenge isn't external. The challenge is inside, right? And so again, I think we encourage people in both of the sets of principles when it comes to relationships and dialogue to do your own evaluation of where are my strengths when it comes to being in relationship or to be sitting down and having deep, meaningful conversation with somebody about some of the challenges, right, that we face or the tensions we're experiencing. What's my ability to do that? And where can I grow the most? And what do I really, you don't have to develop them all as an expert in one sitting, but it's to recognize, I'm really not a good listener. And if I just really focused on listening more, I probably would have a ripple effect and see a change in my relationships or a change in how I'm feeling. And so sometimes it can just be one thing you start to focus on. And you just say, I'm going to listen more than I talk. And in the conversations I have with this person, it can make a significant difference.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. It sounds like a must read. So where can people find your book, and tell us again what it's called?
Well, the name of the book is Polarity Intelligence, The Missing Logic in Leadership. I got it right here so we can show your viewers what the cover looks like.
Nice.
And they can get it really at their favorite bookstore where they get their books. We also have a website that we created for the book called polarityintelligence.com. And you can order the book right from there too. We have a lot of different sources for it. So that's where they can find it. And of course, they can all leave their 5-star reviews on Amazon as well.
Of
And you can
course.
get it from Amazon too.
Well, I'll put all that in the show notes for
Yeah.
everybody who's watching, because this is a must read and I haven't read it yet, and I'm going to soon. So are there any last things that you would like to share with our viewers before we sign off?
Well, we just thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk about the book. It's only been out for a little over a month. And we want to start a movement in leaders, both personally. We talked a lot about the personal polarities leaders deal with, but also we have a lot of examples in the book too of just organizational business. Entrepreneurs deal with a lot of polarity. So we're trying to broaden the scope of how they show up in our lives. And to not only check out our book website, but we also have our website, MissingLogic.com. And tune into our podcast, because we try to really bring these alive in our podcast with our episodes as well.
Yeah, that's the TRU Leader
The
Podcast.
TRU Leader Podcast.
And I think I would, TRU, TRU.
Yes.
Thriving, resilient, and unstoppable is what that stands for.
Love
And I
it.
think I would just say, again, polarities are a universal law. You can't avoid them. And while our book is focused on leaders, we feel everybody's a leader in your home and your community, and polarities apply to every single person. So I don't want the title to, inhibit anybody to think, oh, this isn't for me, because really they're everywhere. And our purpose and our passion is to make this mainstream, just like problem solving, and that our children's children will be able to quickly differentiate between a problem and a polarity and leverage all that there is in life.
Oh, I love that. And I wish this were taught in our schools. I mean,
So do we.
I know, I'm sure that's part of your thing, but imagine if you had these skills and that awareness growing up, and how we would not take things so personally, and what effect that would have on everything in our lives. So this is incredible. I love your work. I cannot wait to read this book.
Thank you
so much for sharing all this wisdom and just beauty. I can feel your warmth and your passion about this as you speak. So thank you so much for being here. And thank you everybody for watching Irresistible You, Ignite Your Passion and Purpose. We will see you right here next week. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.